Hey everyone! Ever wonder what's really going on behind the scenes on your favorite websites? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on Django's MVT pattern. It's the secret sauce, the architectural blueprint that makes so many modern web apps tick. Let's dive in.
So, let's start with the question I bet you thought about before. You log into a site like Amazon, you go to your order history, and you see your stuff, right? Not mine, not your neighbor's, just yours. The page layout is exactly the same for everyone, but the data is completely personal. How in the world does a website pull that off?
Well, the answer all comes down to how developers manage complexity. See, any dynamic web page, like that Amazon order page, is secretly juggling 3 totally different jobs at the same time. In the software world, we call these concerns, and we need to understand them before we can build anything.
Okay, so here are the big 3. First, you've got the layout. This is all the visual stuff, the HTML structure, the CSS styling, what you actually see and interact with. Then you have the data. This is the raw information, like your specific order details that are sitting in a database somewhere. And finally, you have the business logic. This is the brain of the operation, the set of rules that fetches the right data for the right person and decides what happens when you click a button. Now, you could just throw all of that into one single giant file. I mean, the layout, the database code, the logic, all mashed together. But just look at that. It becomes a tangled spaghetti mess. Can you imagine trying to change a color on the website and accidentally breaking the code that processes payments? It's an absolute nightmare to build, and it's even worse to try and fix later.
So, to avoid that nightmare scenario, some really smart developers came up with a beautiful, elegant solution. It's a core principle of good software design. Instead of mixing everything together, you keep these different jobs in their own separate boxes. This powerful idea is called separation of concerns.
And the philosophy really is that simple. It might sound basic, but the implications are huge. It means your designer can work on making the site look amazing without ever needing to know how the database works. And your backend developer can focus on the complex logic without ever having to worry about tweaking the CSS. Everybody stays in their own lane and things just work better.
And this is exactly where Django's architecture comes into play. Django implements this separation of concerns principle using its own specific pattern called Model View Template, or MVT for short. Think of it as Django's proven recipe for keeping those 3 big jobs neatly organized and working together smoothly.
So, MVT, what do those letters actually stand for? It's time to meet the team. Let's break down the MVT trio and look at the specific role that each component plays.
First up, M is for model. The model is your data expert. It's like the architect for your information. It doesn't care one bit about colors or fonts, it only cares about the structure of your data. The model defines what a user is or what an order contains, and crucially, it's the only part of your entire application that's allowed to talk directly to the database.
Next, we have T for template. This is your presentation specialist, the interior designer. A template is basically just an HTML file, but with special placeholders scattered throughout, kind of like a Mad Libs puzzle. The template knows where everything is supposed to go. It says the user's name goes here, and the list of orders goes here. It has no idea what the actual data is, but it knows exactly where to put it.
And that brings us to the final piece. V is for view. The view is the project manager, the traffic cop, the brain of the whole operation. It's the glue that holds the other 2 together. When you request a page, the view is what catches that request. It then turns to the model and says, hey, I need the order history for this specific user. Once the model hands back the data, the view passes it over to the template and says, okay, here's the information you need, fill in your blanks.
Okay, so we've met the individual players. Now let's see them in action as a team. We're going to follow the complete journey of a single web request, from the moment you click a link all the way to the final page loading in your browser. Here's how it all plays out step by step. 1. You click a link, sending a request. 2. Django's URL dispatcher acts like a switchboard operator, looking at the URL and connecting it to the exact view that's designed to handle it. 3. That view kicks into gear, running its logic and talking to the model to get the data it needs. 4. The view takes that data and passes it off to the correct template. And finally, 5. The template gets filled with the data, becomes a complete HTML page, and gets sent right back to your browser. Boom! It's a clean, organized, and predictable flow every single time.
Now, a quick heads up. You may have heard of a very similar pattern called MVC, or Model View Controller. The ideas are pretty much identical, but the names can be a bit confusing. The key thing to remember is this. What Django calls a view, the logic part, is what most other frameworks call a controller. And what Django calls a template, the layout part, is what they call a view. The names are a little swapped, but the core principle of separation is exactly the same.
All right, this all seems like a pretty neat system, but so what? Why does it really matter? Why go through all this trouble to separate things? Well, it turns out there are some massive, real-world benefits to building this way. For starters, your code is just instantly more organized. Everything has a home. This makes maintenance an absolute breeze because you can completely change the design in the templates without any fear of breaking the business logic. It also makes team collaboration way more efficient. Front-end developers can live in the template files, and back-end developers can focus on the views and models. And all of this means you're building on a solid foundation that's ready to grow and scale without turning into a mess.
So at the end of the day, that's really the key takeaway. MVT isn't just some random technical term you have to memorize. It is a proven blueprint for building applications that are clean, powerful, and manageable for the long haul.
By cleanly separating your data, your logic, and your presentation, Django gives you a clear and powerful roadmap to turn your ideas into reality. It handles the complexity for you, freeing you up to focus on the fun part, creating. So, the only question left is, what are you going to build with it? Thanks for joining this explainer.